What are you doing here? Sonia's chest rose and fell quickly, her fists clenched. Leave her alone. Richard stepped toward her. Don't talk to me like that. She didn't do anything wrong. I said go back to your room. No, Sonia screamed. You're wicked. You always hit her. You're a monster. The sun was already high over Lagos, casting its golden light on the wide streets. The sound of car horns and hurried footsteps filled the air, but on one peaceful street, behind tall white gates, stood a beautiful mansion. It was a house that people admired from afar. Neatly trimmed flowers lined the driveway. The walls were painted cream and gold. The roof shined in the sunlight. Even the air around the house seemed richer, cleaner, quieter. This was the home of Richard and Elizabeth. To the world, they were perfect. Richard was a successful businessman. He owned 3 companies and was always dressed in fine suits and polished shoes. He drove expensive cars and spoke with power in every word. People respected him. When he stepped into a room, people stood. They shook his hand with both of theirs. They called him Chairman or Sir Richard. He was the man everyone wanted to be around. Elizabeth was his wife, a tall, stunning woman in her 30s with skin like polished bronze and eyes that held both strength and softness. She was known for her beauty, but even more for her quiet grace. She didn't speak much in public, but when she did, people listened. Her clothes were always perfect. Flowing gowns, gold earrings, heels that clicked softly against the marble floors. Together, they looked like royalty. And then there was Sonia, their only child. She was 10 years old, full of life, laughter, and questions. She had her father's bold eyes and her mother's calm smile. She loved ice cream, cartoons, books, and music. She called her father Daddy Rich and her mother Mommy Beautiful. Every night she would hug both of them tightly before going to bed, whispering, "I love you more than chocolate." To outsiders, the family was the picture of happiness. But behind the beautiful walls, there was pain. It started with small things: a raised voice from behind a locked door, a slammed plate, a broken glass. A sound that made Sonia stop playing with her doll and look toward the stairs. Then it grew louder. A scream, a crash, footsteps running. One evening, Sonia sat in the living room watching cartoons. The house smelled of jollof rice and fried plantain. The nanny was in the kitchen. Everything felt normal until her mother came down the stairs quickly, holding a small white towel to her face. There was blood. Sonia dropped her spoon. "Mummy," she said, her small voice shaking. Elizabeth froze. She looked at her daughter, and for a second she tried to smile, but her lips were swollen. Her cheek was red. The towel was soaked in red. "I'm okay, my love," she said quietly. "What happened?" Sonia asked, already standing. Elizabeth sat beside her and hugged her tightly. "I just fell. You know how clumsy I am sometimes." Sonia didn't speak. She touched the side of her mother's face gently. Then she whispered, "Did Daddy push you?" Elizabeth pulled back. Her eyes changed. Firm, serious, quiet. "You must never talk like that, Sonia," she said. "Your daddy is the head of this house. He provides for us. He protects us. Don't ever question him." "But, do you understand?" Sonia nodded slowly, but something inside her was already changing. The next day, Richard brought home gifts. He bought Elizabeth a diamond necklace and surprised Sonia with a brand new pink bicycle. He kissed Elizabeth on the cheek and told her she was his queen. He lifted Sonia up and swung her in the air, laughing like nothing had happened. The house was filled with music, laughter, and expensive perfume, but the towel was still in the laundry basket, stained with blood, and Elizabeth's smile still looked tired. Time moved forward, like it always does. Sonia went to school every morning in her shiny black shoes and neat uniform. Her hair was always braided perfectly by the housemaid. Her lunchbox was always full. Other girls in her class said they wanted to come live in her house. They had no idea what her nights were like. The fights were quiet at first. Then they became storms. Late at night, Sonia would lie in bed and hear the shouting. "You think I'm a fool?" "I said I'm sorry." "Don't raise your voice at me, woman." Then the slap. Sometimes more than one. Sometimes furniture moved. Sometimes her mother cried loud enough for Sonia to hear it through the walls. The next morning, Elizabeth would still dress up for church or a dinner party. She'd apply makeup to cover the bruise on her cheek. She'd smile and tell the driver where they were going. She'd laugh when other women complimented her dress. But inside, Sonia watched and wondered and feared. One Saturday morning, Sonia woke up early. She walked downstairs and stopped when she saw her mother sleeping on the couch. Her arms were folded tightly around herself, and there was a cut on her lip. Sonia tiptoed closer. "Mummy?" Elizabeth opened her eyes. Sonia didn't smile. "Why is Daddy always angry with you?" she asked. Elizabeth sat up slowly. "He's not angry. He hits you," Sonia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth sighed. She rubbed her eyes. "Marriage is not easy, Sonia. But he's hurting you." "He is the man of the house," Elizabeth said. "We don't question him." Sonia's eyes filled with tears. "But it's wrong." Elizabeth touched her cheek gently. "It's our home, my love. It's not perfect, but we stay. We endure. That's what strong women do." Sonia didn't understand. She just nodded. But deep inside, her heart began to change. More time passed. More gifts came. More silence filled the house after the storms. More nights where Sonia hugged her pillow and wished the shouting would stop. Once, during a family party, Richard wrapped his arm around Elizabeth's waist and said loudly, "I'm the luckiest man alive. Look at this woman, my treasure." Everyone clapped and laughed. Elizabeth smiled. But Sonia stood in the corner, holding her cup of juice tightly. She didn't believe in fairy tales anymore, and the house didn't feel like home. Not when her mother flinched at sudden movements. Not when her father slammed doors whenever he was upset. Not when every kind word was followed by something that broke her mother into pieces, behind the beautiful walls. Pain lived like a guest that refused to leave, and now Sonia could see it clearly. It was a rainy evening in Lagos, and the wind blew gently against the windows of the grand house. The air was cold. The lights in the living room glowed softly. Sonia sat on the floor with her coloring book, drawing a pink castle with gold windows. Her little fingers moved carefully, eyes focused, tongue slightly poking out between her lips in concentration. Elizabeth was upstairs, preparing for a dinner event. Richard had just returned from work and wasn't in a good mood. He hated the rain, he hated traffic, and today he had made it clear with his voice, loud and sharp, when he walked through the front door. Sonia's eyes lifted from her drawing for a moment. She could hear her parents talking. Then the tone shifted again. "Elizabeth, how many times do I have to tell you? I didn't mean to forget. I was just what? Do I look like I'm joking with you?" A slap. A crash. Sonia froze. Another slap. A short scream. A thud. Sonia jumped to her feet. She ran upstairs without thinking. Her heart was pounding like someone had banged a drum in her chest. She reached the bedroom door. It was slightly open. She peeked in. Her mother was on the floor, holding her side, breathing hard. Her dress was torn. Her face was red, one side swelling fast. Richard stood above her, chest heaving, belt in hand. Sonia gasped. "Mummy," she cried, pushing the door open. Richard turned around, surprised. "Sonia, get out!" But she ran to her mother instead, tears already pouring from her eyes. "Mummy, what happened? Why did he hit you again?" Elizabeth tried to sit up. "Baby, it's okay." "No, it's not okay," Sonia shouted, looking at her father. "Why did you beat her? What did she do?" Richard's face hardened. "I said leave this room now." Sonia looked at her mother again, heartbreaking. "Why does Daddy hurt you?" Elizabeth took a deep breath, pulled her daughter closer and whispered, "Because he's the man of the house." Sonia pulled back. "What does that mean?" It means he's the one in charge. He provides, he protects, and he makes the rules. But rules don't include beating people. Sonia, Elizabeth said gently, her voice shaky. You're too young to understand. But sometimes marriage comes with pain. You learn to forgive. You learn to stay. Sonia's eyes filled again. But it's not fair. No, Elizabeth said, but it's life. That night Sonia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hugging her teddy bear, thinking about the way her mother's face looked. The bruises, the tears, the silence, and the way her father had stormed out like nothing had happened. She had always believed that her daddy was a hero, but now she didn't know what to believe. And her mother, her beautiful mother, who always smiled and called her my sunshine, was hiding pain so deep that even her daughter's questions couldn't bring it to light. Days passed, then weeks. Sonia didn't speak of that night again. She didn't ask any more questions. But her eyes saw everything. The way Elizabeth flinched when Richard raised his voice. The way she laughed too hard in front of visitors. The way she covered her arms with long sleeves even when the weather was hot. And Richard, he went on as usual. He bought gifts. He made speeches. He laughed with friends. He told people how blessed he was to have such a peaceful wife and a smart daughter. The world applauded. No one knew. At school, Sonia stopped smiling like before. She no longer laughed the loudest in class. She began to draw things in her notebooks. Pictures of women with sad faces, houses with dark clouds above them, girls hiding under beds. Her teacher once asked, "Sonia, are you okay?" She had nodded. Of course. She had learned from her mother. Smile, lie, pretend. One Saturday, Sonia was watching a cartoon where a superhero saved his mother from danger. The mother hugged him and said, "You're my protector." Sonia paused the cartoon. She stared at the screen, quiet. Was she supposed to protect her mother too? How could she? She was just a child. But deep down, something in her began to change. She started watching people more carefully. How husbands treated their wives, how other girls talked about their homes. One girl once said, "My dad got angry and shouted at my mom. I cried all night." Sonia had asked, "Did he beat her?" The girl had frowned. "No, my daddy doesn't do that." Sonia didn't say anything else. She just walked away, confused. Maybe her house wasn't normal. Maybe her life wasn't right. But if her mother, the strongest person she knew, said it was okay, who was she to think differently? By the time Sonia turned 12, the questions had faded. Not because they were answered, but because she had buried them. She no longer ran into her parents' room when she heard fighting. She simply turned the volume of her music higher. She stopped drawing sad pictures. She started smiling more, on purpose. She waved at visitors and said, "Yes, ma," and "No, sir." And everyone said she was such a well-behaved girl. But her heart felt older than her age. Sometimes at night, she would stare at her ceiling and wonder if she would marry someone like her father one day. Would he hit her too? Would she stay like Elizabeth stayed? And sometimes, she thought she probably would. Because that's what women did, right? They endured. They stayed. One day, while helping her mother pack up clothes for donation, Sonia saw a small blue notebook hidden under some old wrappers. She opened it. It was a journal. Her mother's handwriting filled the pages. Neat, small, careful. She read one line. "Today, he told me I was nothing without him. Then he slapped me for answering slowly. I cleaned the blood before Sonia came home." Sonia froze. She read more. Every page was filled with pain. "I want to run away, but where will I go? I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself today. He says he loves me, then he hurts me. Maybe this is love." Sonia felt like her chest would explode. She closed the book quickly. She put it back under the wrappers. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just walked to the window and stared out at the garden. Flowers bloomed outside. But inside the house, pain grew like weeds, quiet, wild, and hidden from the world. The emotional distance between mother and daughter had started as a small crack. Now, it was a wide space. Elizabeth still loved Sonia. She still hugged her, still called her my sunshine, still sat beside her during family prayers. But something had changed. Sonia no longer asked questions. She no longer went to her mother when her heart was heavy. She had learned to carry it alone, just like her mother. They became two women in the same house, connected by blood, separated by silence. And Richard? He kept living like a king, unbothered, untouched, unchallenged. To the world, he was still a great man. To Elizabeth, he was her husband. To Sonia, he was her example of what a man could be. And the saddest part? She was beginning to believe this was how love worked. Sonia was now 13. A new school, a new uniform, a new chapter of life, but the same house, the same rules, the same silence. She had just started her first year in secondary school. Her body was changing. Her voice was stronger. She was no longer the small girl who cried quietly in corners. Her eyes had become sharper, more aware. The things she used to accept without question now made her uncomfortable. She noticed things, more than she used to. The world around her was beginning to open up. At school she made friends, girls who laughed freely, girls who told stories about their families. Funny stories, annoying stories, sometimes even embarrassing stories. But none of them talked about violence. None of them talked about bruises or broken plates or mothers who smiled with tears in their eyes. Sonia smiled too, but hers always felt borrowed. One day during break, her friend Ada whispered, "My parents fought yesterday." Sonia leaned closer. "He beat her?" Ada looked confused. "No, they just shouted at each other. Then my mom slept in the guest room." Sonia paused. "He didn't slap her?" Ida shook her head. "My dad would never do that. He's not like that." Sonia didn't reply. She just nodded. And something inside her shifted again. That night, it rained heavily. The thunder rumbled through the skies, and the sound of water poured down the windows like a drumbeat. Sonia lay in her room, staring at the ceiling. She had a test the next day, but her mind couldn't rest. Her books lay open on the bed, but she hadn't turned a page in an hour. Then she heard it, the first shout. It wasn't loud but sharp. Her body tensed. She sat up. The second shout came, then something crashed. Glass. A vase maybe. A chair. A table. Then came the scream. Her mother. Sonia ran. She didn't think this time. She didn't pause or peek through doors like she used to. She didn't cry silently. She ran. She burst into the living room and froze. Richard stood over Elizabeth, who was on the floor. Her mouth was bleeding. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Her eyes were dazed, her hands trembling. "You call this food?" Richard shouted. "Is this what you feed a man like me?" He kicked the plate across the room. Then he turned and saw Sonia. "What are you doing here?" Sonia's chest rose and fell quickly. Her fists clenched. "Leave her alone." Richard stepped toward her. "Don't talk to me like that. She didn't do anything wrong. I said go back to your room." "No!" Sonia screamed. "You're wicked. You always hit her. You're a monster." Richard stared at her, shocked. And then, without warning, he slapped her. The sound cracked through the air like a whip. Sonia stumbled back, hit the wall, and slid down to the floor. Her head rang. Her cheek burned. Her vision blurred with tears. Elizabeth crawled toward her. "Sonia." Sonia shook her head slowly, dazed. She looked at her father with new eyes, eyes that now saw him for what he really was. Not a hero, not a provider, just a bully. Richard stepped back, breathing hard. He dropped into the couch and picked up his glass of wine like nothing had happened. Elizabeth pulled Sonia close and held her tight. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." But it was too late. Something had broken in Sonia that night, and it could never be fixed. The next morning, Sonia stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The side of her face was red and slightly swollen. There was a small bruise just under her right eye. Her lip was cut. She touched it gently and winced. Her school uniform looked too neat for the way her heart felt. Elizabeth knocked softly. "Are you okay?" Sonia didn't answer. "I've made your breakfast. I'm not hungry." Elizabeth opened the door, stepped in, and saw her daughter staring at her reflection. They looked at each other through the mirror. Neither of them said a word. Elizabeth stepped forward and tried to touch her face, but Sonia moved away. "Please," Emma said, "just go to school. Try to forget." "How do you forget a slap?" Sonia asked. "How do you forget fear?" Elizabeth closed her eyes. "He was angry." Sonia turned. "Is that the excuse? Every time? He's angry, so it's okay?" Elizabeth didn't reply. Sonia grabbed her bag and walked out. School was usually a safe place, but today Sonia felt like every eye was on her. She kept her head low, tried to avoid people, but the pain was still there, on her face, refusing to hide. During assembly, Miss Fowler, her class teacher, stood at the front, her eyes scanning the students. When they landed on Sonia, they paused. Her face tightened. After the bell rang, she found Sonia in the corridor. "Sonia, come." Sonia followed slowly. They walked into the empty classroom. Miss Fowler shut the door. "What happened to your face?" "I fell," Sonia said quickly. "Where?" "In the bathroom." "Is that the truth?" Sonia hesitated. "Yes." Miss Fowler walked closer. She crouched so they were eye level. "Sonia, I know you. I've been your teacher for a year. You're a quiet girl, but you don't lie very well." Sonia bit her lip. "You can trust me," Miss Fowler said gently. "I won't judge you, but I need you to be honest." Sonia's eyes filled slowly. Then she broke. Tears spilled onto her cheeks as her lips trembled. "It was my dad," she whispered. "He hit me." Miss Fowler's breath caught. "Why?" "Because I told him to stop hitting my mum." Miss Fowler reached out and hugged her tightly. "Oh, my dear child." Sonia cried into her shoulder. Years of pain, silence, fear, all spilling out at once. After a few minutes, Miss Fowler stood. "You're coming with me. We're going to the principal's office." Sonia wiped her eyes. "Please don't call my parents." "I won't. But you need someone who can help. Someone stronger than me." The principal's office smelled like vanilla and fresh paper. Mrs. Kenneth was in her 50s, with grey streaks in her braided hair and gentle but firm eyes. She looked up when they entered. "Miss Fowler, what's going on?" Miss Fowler closed the door. "We need to talk." Mrs. Kenneth stood. "Sonia, come sit." Sonia sat quietly, hands on her lap. Miss Fowler whispered something into the principal's ear. Mrs. Kenneth's face changed. She looked at Sonia. "Sonia, you're safe here. You can tell me anything. Nothing you say will be used against you. You're not in trouble." Sonia took a deep breath, then another. Her fingers shook. "My dad beats my mum," she said slowly, "all the time. At home, when no one is watching. And last night, he beat her so badly. I tried to stop him, and he beat me too." Mrs. Kenneth's eyes filled. Sonia's voice cracked. "I hate it. I hate him. But my mum keeps saying it's normal, that he's the head of the house, that I should not ask questions." Mrs. Kenneth stood slowly and walked around the desk. She hugged Sonia tight, gently rubbing her back. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. "You are so brave." Sonia cried again, but this time not from fear, from release, from the small hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would listen. The air in Mrs. Kenneth's office felt still after Sonia's voice faded. The principal was silent for a long moment, her arms still wrapped gently around the girl in front of her. Her chest rose and fell slowly as she tried to keep her emotions steady. Miss Fowler stood near the door, tears quietly sliding down her cheeks. Sonia had told them everything, every bruise, every scream, Every silent dinner, every broken plate, and every time she had heard her mother cry through the walls. She didn't leave anything out, not this time. When she was done, she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and whispered, "Please don't call my dad." Mrs. Kenneth pulled away slightly and looked her in the eye. "We're not calling him, I promise." Sonia gave a shaky nod. "You were very brave today," the principal said. "What you did, telling us the truth, it matters. And I want you to know something important. This is not your fault. None of it, not even a little." Sonia blinked quickly. "But I yelled at him. That's why he hit me." "No," Mrs. Kenneth said firmly. "He hit you because he was wrong. You were protecting your mother. That is not something to be punished for." Sonia nodded again. Her face was red from crying, her shoulders tired from years of carrying the silence. Miss Fowler stepped forward. "Should we get the school counselor involved?" Mrs. Kenneth thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, not yet. Let's try a different way first." She turned to Sonia. "Where's your mother now?" "At home," Sonia replied. "She's always home." The principal took a deep breath. "I'm going to visit her." Sonia's eyes widened. "Please don't tell her I said anything." "I have to, Sonia," she said gently. "But I'll be careful. I won't mention everything. I'll just ask questions. I want her to know someone is watching, that someone cares." Sonia didn't say anything. She just looked down. Mrs. Kenneth placed a hand over hers. "Go to class, okay? If anything ever happens again, anything at all, come to me." Sonia nodded and stood slowly. She turned back at the door, and for the first time she whispered, "Thank you." Then she walked out. That afternoon, after the school bell rang and the children rushed home, Mrs. Kenneth didn't go to her office. She didn't take any calls or sit with other staff for their usual post-school tea. She drove straight to the estate gate where the Okonkwo family lived. She had been there once before, 2 years ago, during a PTA dinner where Richard had given a long, impressive speech about raising leaders in a broken generation. Elizabeth had stood beside him that night, smiling quietly, clapping when he paused, looking like the perfect wife. Now Mrs. Kenneth stood before that same gate, her heart beating slower, heavier. She told the security man her name and who she came to see. After a short call, he let her in. The house looked just as grand as she remembered. White walls, large glass windows, flowers blooming along the sides. It was the kind of place people imagined when they thought of peace, but she now knew the truth. Behind the beauty, pain lived here. The door opened. Elizabeth stood there, dressed in a long, simple gown. No makeup, no jewelry. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a deep tiredness. "Good afternoon," Elizabeth said softly. "You're the principal?" "Yes," Mrs. Kenneth replied. "Mrs. Kenneth, I'm sorry for coming unannounced." Elizabeth opened the door wider. "Please come in." The sitting room was cold, quiet, and too clean. Not a single item out of place, not a sound in the air. Even the ticking clock felt afraid to speak. Elizabeth sat gracefully and motioned for the principal to do the same. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked. "No, thank you," Mrs. Kenneth replied. There was silence for a moment. Then the principal spoke. "I came to talk about Sonia." Elizabeth's eyes flickered. "Is she in trouble?" "No, not at all. In fact, she's one of our brightest. But she came to school today with bruises." Elizabeth looked away. "She said she fell," the principal continued, "but the truth came out." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. "She shouldn't be talking about private matters." "She's a child," Mrs. Kenneth said gently, "and she's scared. No child should live in fear." "She's not afraid," Elizabeth said quickly. "She is loved, provided for. She has everything she needs." "But not everything she deserves," the principal said. Elizabeth stood. She walked to the window, her arms folded. "He is her father," she said after a pause. "He is my husband. This is our home. And whatever happens in it, we handle it." "But it's not being handled," Mrs. Kenneth said softly. "It's being buried, covered with silence, and your daughter is drowning in it." Elizabeth's back remained turned. "You don't understand." "I understand more than you think." Elizabeth turned. "Have you ever been married?" "No," the principal admitted. "But I've seen many women walk into my office broken. I've seen children like Sonia grow up believing that pain is part of love." "She's fine." "She's not," Mrs. Kenneth replied, her voice rising slightly. "She cried like a child who's been carrying a mountain on her back. She told me everything, and I promised I would help." "I don't need your help," Elizabeth said sharply. "We are okay." "No, you're not. You're bleeding in silence." "I said we're okay." Mrs. Kenneth stood now too. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained steady. "Elizabeth," she said softly, "one day you will look back at this and wish you said yes to help. One day, Sonia may become a woman who thinks being beaten is part of being loved. She will repeat what she has seen here, and it will destroy her." Elizabeth's eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. "Leave," she said quietly. "Elizabeth, please, leave my house." Mrs. Kenneth didn't argue. She picked up her handbag, walked slowly to the door, and paused. "I hope you heal," she said. Then she stepped outside. The door closed behind her with a gentle click. And inside, Elizabeth stood still, eyes on the floor, hands shaking. She had said no to help, again. But this time, her heart didn't feel strong. It felt shattered. In the car, Mrs. Kenneth sat for a long time before starting the engine. She stared at the house. She thought of Sonia, brave, broken, beautiful Sonia, and her mother, too tired to breathe the truth out loud. She wiped her eyes. Then she drove away, disappointed.